Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Football Podcast, where today we'll be discussing how players are being given amount of money that should be given to key workers. I'm your host, Matthew. Let's introduce the others. Today, alongside me, we have Nathan McWayne. We have Will Barham.
Hello.
And we have 2 special appearances from Mr. Binfield.
Good evening, everyone.
And Mr. Hulse.
Nice to be back, guys.
Thank you very much. So let's get into episode 4. So I have just been reading on the BBC Sports app. Premier League clubs are going to go back into small groups of training from Tuesday. Nathan, do you think this is a good idea?
Yes, it is a good idea because, one, it gets the players back a bit. Obviously, small groups, with big groups like 11-a-side training, that was then going straight into big crowded areas. That would affect the pandemic because it might infect them and then that even more. So I think we'd have it in small groups rather than big groups. I think it is good to start it earlier rather than later match fit.
And you were saying there about the big groups there. That's really interesting. Mr. Binfield, do you think that do you think that players will stick in those small groups, or do you think they'll secretly fall off into big groups?
No, I think a lot of teams will abide by the recommendations. I think it is a good idea getting back into small groups. You think strikers working together, defenders working together, it kind of develops those relationships again. Just gets them best prepared for when they return to football, really.
Yes, of course, and you're saying about relationships. So with the relationships part, when players are injured, do you think the people that give the advice about injuries, do you think that they'll get close to the players and help them out?
Yeah, I think they're professionals in that area, so any advice that they'll give to the players will help them through relationships and any injuries that occur.
Of course, and Mr. Hulse, they were saying that they're going to have to abide by the 2-meter rule, but what about if you're playing within a small group, you're going to have to be tackling? That's obviously not going to keep the 2-meter rule. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult, isn't it? I know me and Mr. Binfield played for a 6-a-side football tournament team on a Monday, and the close football that we play, we're often inside the 2-meter zone because it's got tiki-taka style football Arsenal used to play. So we're well within the 2 meters. And I think we also saw in the Bundesliga at the weekend, they were told not to celebrate together, but actually sometimes, you kind of forget where you are, forget what's happening, and you end up closer than 2 meters, whether that's kind of celebrating or whatever it might be. And I think, like Mr. Binfield said, you can kind of see them splitting up between defenders, midfielders and attackers. But I think it's going to be very, very hard to stick to the 2-meter social distancing when these guys are training.
And you're saying there about forgetting, they could just be playing and they'll go in for attack and they'll go, oh no, we forgot. And that's just maybe that could increase on a second rise as well, a second spike, which might cause a big difference. So Germany has restarted football this week. Mr. Binfield, do you think this is good?
I'm very much sitting on the fence on this one. I'm a massive football fan. I rarely ever watched Bundesliga, to be fair. The only teams I really knew were like your Dortmunds and your Munichs. But the football fan in me is like, yes, big fan. Watched about 20 minutes of the Borussia Dortmund game, and then I thought it's just like a training game, really. No atmosphere. Schalke, they didn't really look like they wanted to be there. And to me, I did turn off in the end and watch the chase because I thought, it just feels like a trading match, and it doesn't have the same effect as your 80,000 fans that are there, which draws me to the game a lot more, I think.
And you were saying there about the atmosphere of it, and when it comes back, will the atmosphere be the same, and when will it be the same? So Nathan, do you think that maybe there should be sort of fan thing that they could do behind closed doors? What could they do?
Well, I mean, they could minimise the fans' attendance. centimetres apart on the chairs. Using, well, they actually have to apologise because they were as fans and like holding forward to apologise for their whatever Hong Kong is. But I think that it's 2 metres apart. So it's like you've got one there, put 2 metres apart on one row, and there's part behind you, and that's still like close to each other. But fans could be involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to keep that 2 metre rule, when you're trying to watch a really good game of football. And the strategy, do you think that they'll come up with a good strategy, Mr. Hulse?
Yeah, I do. I think we've got to keep everyone's safety in mind, footballers, all the people involved. But I think they were saying that they reckoned in the stadium at the weekend to get the Bundesliga going, there was about 300 people in the stadium, whether that be 5 or 6 journalists, about 50, 60 from each team, and then the people just to keep the stadium running. So it's quite a considerable amount of people. I think from a school point of view, we couldn't put 300 people in our school right here, right now. So it's a really difficult position. But I do think there's a massive want for everybody to play football again. And you can see that by the unanimous vote today, that all the teams. So I do think they want to play. And I think it'll be great for society to get football going. Not everybody loves it, I understand that, but a large proportion of us do. And I think they feel that, and therefore they do want to do that bit. And I applaud them for going an extra mile and trying to make it work for us.
Of course, and you're saying about the extra mile, just keeping on pushing to get that right strategy. And Will, do you think that the other countries will lead on from Germany?
Yeah, I think so. Because if Germany can get it right, other countries will follow and follow their strategies, and hope they can do and continue the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big commitment, and you're being watched on by, Mr. Hulse, you saying about journalists, everyone's watching. You've just got to get it right, so you don't want to make any mistakes. So also on the transfer market news, we have Fulham have signed an extension on their keeper's contract, keeping him for a few more years. Do you think this is right, Nathan?
Well, I am a big transfer guy, like a bit of transfer here and there. I think to keep him on, it's a bit of a waste, to be honest. There's no problem. He's past his prime. He's not really worth money, but I think I could just sell him off to a club like Leighton. Who is that kind of player? It's still in the championship. They've got players like Piero, Inoka, got all that players. Yeah, I think they should probably let him go. Have a good time, just let him go. And get the market, which I am
of course, you're saying about it's not the right time. What do you do? And so, Mr. Binfield, is it the right time to be signing a new contract? Do you think the player should hold back?
I'll be honest with you. When you said who the player was, I had to research him because I've never heard of him in my life. But I think it was just written in his contract, wasn't it, that they had the opportunity to extend it any time. So he's there for another 4 years. But then you're on the other half, you've got Mansfield who have just released 13 players from their squad because of monetary problems, and Salford they've just released 11 players. So you can see on one end it's good for the club and it's good for the player because he's there for another 4 years, he's settled long term. Then you think short term, all these clubs in League 1, League 2 are suffering as a result and losing over 10 players because they haven't got the financial gain like these Championship Premier League teams.
Yeah, it's such a shame because got such good talent that needs to be brought up, and you can't. And overall, clubs in the UK will be suffering financially. Do you think that big clubs should release some players to free up some money to put down to League 1 and League 2, Mr. Hulse?
Real good question, that, Matt. I think it's really tricky. I think some of the clubs in the Premier League, like your Crystal Palaces and clubs like that, they're not hugely financially backed. I think you've got your Man Cities and your Manchester Uniteds that sit in slightly different places. So I do think there's a lot of clubs higher up the system that are probably still, whilst they might have millions in the bank, it costs them millions of pounds a week to run. And, you know, if a Premier League club has £50 million in the bank, that won't get them very far at all. I was reading one report. It was quite interesting. It said the biggest issue is without fans, that will really hit like League One and League Two clubs, because a lot of their income comes from ticket sales. Whereas the Premier League, a lot of their income just comes from TV rights. So if there aren't any fans, the Premier League clubs can survive quite easily. And it is the League One, League Two clubs that will really suffer. And the Peterborough chairman was on a couple of days ago on Talk Sport, and he was saying without fans next year, he won't be able to make it through the season because he won't have the revenue from season tickets. So I do think the FA have got a responsibility to keep those clubs running. Otherwise, when this is all over, there's going to be no clubs to support apart from Premier League clubs, and that's going to be a massive shame.
Well,
Portsmouth are gone, I think. Gone.
Yes, I have to say, if you watch Mark Catlin, he knows everything. He's a good man.
Nathan will be a Southampton fan by January.
You might join. You could join Mr. Carter, be a Brighton fan.
That's it. Yeah, if you have to go along the south coast.
I'm a Bournemouth on them clubs.
I do think it's quite interesting, Matt. We were talking about one of the biggest things that frustrated me in football in this whole episode has been when the Premier League clubs firstly looked to furlough their staff and use the government scheme, and like the couple of big clubs like Tottenham and Liverpool, I was really, really disappointed to see that. That their clubs financially backed by very, very rich people just taking advantage of a situation. And out of all the things financial, that's the thing that's disappointed me the most, actually, of this whole window.
No, yeah, of course, that is very disappointing. You know, the government scheme, which could be used to all those local people. But when you look at Newcastle's new owner, who is now worth £260 billion, I mean, you know, what's 1,000 a week, 1,000 a month? Sorry, you know, it really is a massive matter that everyone should be taking. So we had a good debate there about the new signing and what that has been caused. Will, so the key workers are getting paid minimums or even furloughed. Do you think football players should now take their money and say, actually, no, you have it. Cristiano Ronaldo, I can suffer for a long time. You know, I've got savings. I'll give you my salary. Do you think this is a good idea?
Yeah, I do think that is a good idea, because some players have already donated amounts of their wage to charities that support key workers. So if more players did it, they'd get more money and they'd get paid more for the job they're doing.
Of course, and the background staff as well. This is really, you know, big. But now, like Mr. Boris Johnson said, you know, it's coming back. Parks are really busy now. Do you think that police will take action with local football, Nathan?
Well, I think the local county want not the FA for Sunday League. Their season start in September still. I've had words from that from my manager from Southampton. They said that they still want it to be going on when it's there to do so. Obviously, not rushing into decisions of like, oh yeah, it will Tottenham. And then people's lives, because obviously some younger people don't have that sort of safety because they've got underlying health conditions. I think if it is going to continue in September, I'd be happy because one, it gets me back into football. Two, I think if it is going to be crowds, like fans, not fans, like parents, they have to be either 2 meters apart, household, stay together. But I think police should definitely be at not all the games, but ones that I know that are going to affect the pandemic. But obviously by September, I think they have it that will happen to get on with the show. It's like the Queen song.
Yeah, get on with the show. Get on with it. And you were saying there, Nathan, the Sunday League. Mr. Hulse, do you think that will return, and do you think that should happen?
The Sunday League, yeah, I think it's absolutely vital for kind of all of our guys' kind of mental well-being and just physical well-being. I think it's absolutely key. And what it will look like, clearly the end of the season is gone and that's finished. But I really hope for, September, October time, really to get those leagues back up and running again in some way, shape or form. I suppose the idea being if at that point we're all in school, then supposedly we should be able to kind of play our Sunday league sport. But I do think for you guys and for everybody, it's such an important part of life. I do anything possible to try and make those things happen.
Of course, and you're saying important. It's so important, and it's mental health week, I think, this week, and it's just keeping those brains, flowing and not ticking over. Also, the press. This is a massive thing for the press. There's new information coming in all the time. Do you think the press should be going to the stadiums, Mr. Binfield? Do you think they should be there?
Personally, I think press, like your journalists within the clubs, the sports scientists, all that kind of stuff, they should be there. As for the wider world, I probably would say at this current time to view from a wider perspective, really. It's difficult, I know. It's going to come, everything's going to return at different stages. But I feel they should take a backseat in this. Obviously, you've got like the Brighton, they do every week like a Zoom, like this kind of meeting with the press. I know. I think it's Graham Potter does it every week. I think he's the only person in the Premier League to do it. So I think that's the way to go with at the moment, and how to keep track of clubs and how they're progressing in this time. But yeah, I think they should just take a back seat for the short term at least.
Yeah, very good point saying about taking a back seat there, just relaxing and just taking it step by step, taking it nice and slowly. So Nathan is going to do a 20 keepy up challenge this week. We're going to work around different challenges for the football. So do we think Nathan will do the 20 keepy up challenge?
Not a chance, no.
Not a chance. Right,
if he makes double figures, I think that'd be great.
Be lucky. Right, let's see if he can do it then. Here he goes. 1.
Hope there's no greenhouses.
He's only done 12. He's only done 12. Oh, boo.
Give him one more go. Go on.
Yeah, one more go. One more go. Come on.
What happened to his other foot?
Oh,
he lost it again. Oh, that was even worse. Oh no. We didn't get it on camera, so yeah, no, he's lost.
That foot was over the fence now.
Yeah, nightmare.
Yeah, so I think Nathan failed that challenge. So that is the end of our 4th episode of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay home and listen to the government's advice. And we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.